Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. Kubai has already greeted the colleagues and welcomed everybody to the meeting. My name is Miss Manzini. If I can just introduce myself to the colleagues who might not know me, I'm going to be taking the colleagues through the presentation today. But just like Mr. Kubai had indicated, I am not working alone. We are working hand in hand. I must indicate that our presentation is not that long because we are not dealing with content, but however, we are just trying to assist the educators or the HODs or the leaders who are actually managing our subject in our different institution. To start with, the title of today's workshop, we are capacitating the head of department in managing the social science as a subject, because we are picking up that when we are visiting schools, we are not actually getting what the HOD is supposed to be doing, or rather, we find that there's a need to actually capacitate or rather help the educators or the HODs in terms of how do they manage the social science. Because remember, colleagues, our subject is actually constituting of two subjects, so it's very difficult, especially if you are not specializing in the subject. But before I can carry on, I'm going to ask Mr. Kubai, can you hear me? Am I clear enough on that side?
Loud and clear, madam.
Is the presentation projected?
It's flighted.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Moving right along, if you look at the slide on top, it says as leaders, because I believe that HODs are actually the leaders of the subject. Leadership and management are actually interconnected. You will see that you will have to address challenges that your teachers are going to be faced with. You must come up with strategies as well, as you should have a vision as the subject head or the subject monitor of that particular institution. So you need to have goals. And remember, colleagues, we do not have to work in isolation. We should work as a teamwork with our teachers so that we can ensure that they are constantly motivated and they are always striving for the best. So if you're looking at that particular slide, it's just a motivator to say, remember, let us not only be the leaders that are only looking at the teachers, we're just in front and we don't want to actually assist the educators in managing the subject. It's interconnected. Leadership and management, it's interconnected. It works together. There are times where you need to take decision as a manager, and there are times where you need to push the team to work together in order for you to achieve these particular goals. So colleagues, this is just a reminder, like I indicated. These are just reminders of what needs to happen, just to look at the overview of what we're going to talk about. It's not like you will notice that it's not so lengthy, but however, it starts with the GDE vision and mission, and then it continues to the motivational quote that we're going to try and motivate the colleagues with. We're going to talk about the purpose. Why are we meeting today? What is it that myself and Mr. Gubai have noticed when we are visiting our school that is actually lagging or that is actually needing our assistance in terms of capacitating and helping the colleagues that we work with in managing the subject that we are heading. We're also going to look at the legislative framework. What are the legal framework that is actually guiding the management of our subject? What are the things that we really need to remember? We'll also talk about the importance, because what we have realized, myself and Mr. Gupai, is the educator profile, which is very key when educators or HODs are allocating subject to teachers. We are going to actually outline the importance of making sure that you have those educator profiles and what is the use of having these educator profiles. How can we use the educator profiles into making sure that we achieve the results that we are actually looking for in terms of the educators that are teaching the subject? We'll also highlight, or we're going to take a discussion in terms of the lesson presentation or lesson preparation and lesson provincial lesson lesson plans that were shared with all institutions so that you know exactly what is expected of you in terms of those lesson preparations and what is expected of the teacher in terms of the lesson preparations. We'll talk about what are the things or minimum requirements that we are actually expecting when we are looking at the curriculum itself. How must the curriculum be delivered in the social science space? Because we find that in the languages, teachers have a way of treating the subject. In mathematics as well, there is a way of treating the subject. Now, we are going to share the strategies that we feel that is going to actually make it easier for you as an HO to monitor, and it will also make it easier for the learner to refer on a later stage when they have to study for an examination. We'll also look at curriculum tracking tools. Why curriculum tracking tools? You will notice that as we're going to move along, we're going to demonstrate how can we populate and how can we make sure that we're calculating our percentages correctly. We're also going to try and guide or give you tips of what are the things that you need to remember when you are managing this curriculum of ours. What are the documents or what are the minimum requirement as an HOD of the things that needs to be in place to make sure that the curriculum is delivered correctly. We'll also talk about moderation of our task, because we have noticed that in different subjects, the weightings in terms of the percentages of low order, middle order, and high order is different. So we find that when we go to different schools, we find that teachers are actually not adhering to what is expected in our subject. So this is just a guide so that everybody can actually be at clear and know what needs to happen when it comes to the social science as a subject. We'll also take questions as well as the answers. Just colleagues, this is just a reminder. It's like standard operation. We need to start with the vision and mission of GDE, whereby we remind the colleagues about what is the department trying to achieve. We must make sure that all our learners in our institution, they are inspired, because our institutions are all innovative. They have this system that is culturing or nurturing the innovative and education system that is going to make sure that all learners that are there, they are actually valued. They feel valued and they feel inspired. How are you going to achieve this? We try and make sure that we are committed in making sure that we are providing all schools which are functional and which can enable the teaching and learning that can be protected, and it can also promote the right of every learner that is in our institution. It doesn't matter which circuit you belong to. Are you in circuit 1 or you in circuit 5? All these learners, if you have a child and a learner in front of you, all of them should get equal education, and it must be equitable, and because we are all working from the same CABS document. So colleagues, this is just a reminder. I know that most of the colleagues, they get the same reminder in all our meetings that we are actually trying to we are conducting. Now, as a motivation, colleagues, to start with, it says as a leader, you need to inspire people to want to do something. I know I've been an HOD, or I was an HOD for a couple of years. It's very key that as a leader or as an HOD, you need to inspire the teachers, because sometimes educators, they get so overwhelmed by the work that they are doing that they start being resilient of doing certain things. But as a leader, as their leader, as an HOD, make sure that you inspire those people. And also, as an HOD, you are a manager. How does a manager do? You make sure that there are systems in place so that all the people that are accounting to you, they can be accountable for what is actually happening. So you manage all the systems that are there, or the strategic plans that you have, so that you can make sure that people are accountable for doing something. Because remember, colleagues, the educators that we have in our institution, they need to be accountable for the work that they deliver. So as their manager, teacher, you make sure that you keep them accountable. But you cannot keep them accountable if you as an HOD yourself, you are not accountable. So we're going to try and assist. This is just a motivator to say, remember, we are leaders and we are managers. We need, as much as we are managing the systems, we must not forget the inner heart of the teacher. That heart that always, when teachers are overwhelmed and they see the work as too much, they then start to be despondent. So we need to inspire them, and we need to make sure that things are happening in our school. So this is just a motivator, colleagues, so that we can all remember what is the purpose of today's meeting. We are trying to provide a framework. It's a framework. It's not a policy. It's just a guideline. It's a framework that will assist you in managing the structures which are necessary for the minimum conditions that needs to be in place at different institutions, so that teaching and learning can actually take place smoothly. You will remember that we said in our GDE mission, we said we must make sure that all our institution teaching and learning is of good quality. So before it can be good quality, as HODs or as managers of the subject, we need to make sure that there are necessary structures, managing necessary structures that are there. We're also going to share strategies that HODs can use in order for them to monitor and to track the curriculum delivery that the teachers are teaching in their different classes. We're also going to talk about how can we protect teaching time, and how can we also help you guys in order to complete that educator reporting tool, because
Excuse me, Manzini.
Yes, sir.
All right, there's someone who's interjecting here. Puleng Maloka, please deactivate your camera. You are disturbing. Kindly deactivate your camera, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tatane Kubai. You are doing a sterling job to look out for such things. I was at the point where we were discussing the issue of protecting teaching time. Remember, colleagues, in our subject, for instance, we've got 3 hours per week. So how can we make sure that we're protecting this time in making sure that the teachers are doing what is actually is expected of them to be doing in class? Remember, you cannot always be in all the classroom at all time. So how can you make sure that time is protected at all times? You can only do that by making sure that these educator reporting tools are actually completed as teachers are teaching throughout the term. We'll also assist the educators. What are the minimum indicators that are needed when we are moderating our formal task? So in essence, we are trying to give you as much as we can, so that when you go back to the teachers, you are actually more capacitated. You know exactly what needs to happen. A teacher is not going to say, Miss Manzini said this, or Mr. Gubai said, no, we cannot do the preparations because we've got provincial lesson plans, because we're going to discuss that as well. So please, colleagues, stay put, and we're hoping that this is going to take us through. These are just legislative framework, the National Education Policy Act, as well as the South African Schools Act of Act number 84 of 1996, as well as the Employment of Education Act of Act 76 of 1998, as well as Circular 8, which is addressing mostly about how to manage the subject, Circular 28 of 2007. Now, we started by saying it's important for the HOD to actually profile the teachers. When you're profiling the teachers, colleagues, it gives you a deeper understanding of what the educator, who this educator is, what motivates them, and what could be their challenges. Without completing these profiles, you wouldn't know that, because you are not friends with all the teachers that are actually teaching at your own institution. But however, by reading on those profiles, you need to add a space where you say, for instance, we're in term 4, we're going to allocate subjects for the following year. You need to understand exactly who the person that you are dealing with. It will also help the colleagues with the record of subjects that the teacher had majored in. This is very key, colleagues. In social science, we find that we have teachers that have majored sometimes in science. We have teachers that have majored in mathematics that have never done social science in their lives. So if you don't do or you don't complete the educator profile, you're going to be sitting with people who has never done social science in their lives. So it's key, colleagues, that we know exactly who majored in which subject. And if they've majored in the social science, it's good enough. Then you know that the subject is in the hands of the relevant person. And also if they did not, because we do understand that sometimes the principal can just say, just fill up the post. Make sure that if that you know that this particular educator did not major in this subject, so you're going to make sure that you capacitate the educator, you walk with them all the time, the upskilling that we always talk about. You will make sure that they attend all our workshops because you want them to be clear. So if you don't know whether they've majored in the subject or they did not major in the subject at varsity or at college, you wouldn't have the information at hand. Also with the educator profiles, you are also going to, I know that at the end of the year, you are going to give a wish list. You give the opportunity for the teachers to select the subject they wish to teach. So if you know which one they like to teach, you are fulfilling their wish list. Colleagues, if teachers are teaching the subject they love and they are passionate about, they are going to perform miracles. But we find that when we go to school for school visit, you find a teacher telling you that I hate what I'm doing. I hate social science because I've never even done social science myself. The last time I did social science was when I was at school. I was a learner in grade 12 or I was a learner in grade 10. So colleagues, please, as much as we want to fill up the post, it's very key that we know who are we dealing with. It will also give you a privilege to have a record of what subject this teacher has taught before and what experience they have, number of years in teaching the subject. So before you allocate these subject to teachers is key. Educator profile is one of the major things that you also need to look at. And last point, it says, you're then going to allocate the subject to the relevant teacher who will do justice in the subject. And you know, when teachers are specialists in the subject, they strive to achieve the best because they can give what they know, they can give what they enjoy. If you just give a subject, especially unfortunately in our case in social science, we find teachers that don't have no passion in the subject. When you interact with the teacher tells you the last time I did social science was in grade 9. So even at FET level, that teacher has never done the social science. So how can you expect as an HOD, you expect the very same teacher to give you dramatic results with learners? Because what will happen is this particular teacher will then have to every day teach herself before she can teach the learners. So she must teach herself at home before she can teach the learners in class. In some of the cases, you find that not all of them even have the passion to do that. They don't even teach themselves. All that they do, they will follow the textbooks as it is, and they will just fill up a post. And as an HOD, you're going to be frustrated because our subject, you will notice that most of the learners are failing the subject. It is not because the learners are a problem. It is the manner in which we are treating the subject. So it's very key. So the first thing as an HOD that you need to remember, profiling is important. It's very key because you need to know who you're dealing with and you need to allocate the subject to a relevant person. The next bullet that we are going to talk about are the teacher files. I'm not going to read verbatim because we are going to share this presentation in our HOD forum so that the HOD WhatsApp group so that the colleagues can remember what are the minimum things that needs to be in the educator file. Remember, colleagues, this is just an exemplar It is not that we are saying it must follow each other the way that it appears there, but however, these are the minimum requirements that we are expecting of in an educator file. What is key also, what we always notice when we go to school, is that most educators don't have all the three components of the timetable. An educator should have their personal timetable, the class timetable, together with the composite timetable. And the DA period needs to be there, colleagues. So please make sure that this is one of the key things that I'm going to highlight on this particular page. And then in terms of the policies, I'm sure it's written there. When you receive it, you will go through it. And I think what I need to also emphasize is the last two bullets that speaks on the subject meetings. Subject meetings, colleagues, are very key. They need to happen once or twice a month. It depends on the availability and the workload that you've got, but at least once a month, where you as an educator or as an HOD, you are finding out from the teachers what are the challenges that they've got. Because remember, on a monthly basis, you need to also complete what we call the monthly report. You cannot have a monthly report if you didn't interact with your teachers. So it's key that you have those subject meetings. Subject meetings, what is the main key that we are discussing in the subject meetings are the subject matters. And the subject matters that are going to actually aim at to improving the performance of the learners. If you know that a particular grade is struggling, pair the teacher who is not struggling with the teacher who is actually struggling so that they can help each other. So if we do not have meetings with the subject teachers, we wouldn't know who is struggling and we wouldn't know who is actually doing well. So it's important those reports are there, and also the minutes that are evident to say you are doing what needs to happen. Now let's talk about the lesson plans. Firstly, we could gladly say province has provided all institutions with the provincial lesson plan. And we are glad to say when we go to all institutions we are visiting, those provincial lesson plans are filed in teacher files. But however, they are not utilized. What do we mean by not utilized? You'll see the next bullet speaks to the expectation. It says it is expected of the teacher to use a pencil on the provincial lesson plan so that they can reflect the dates and they can also write their own reflection regarding a lesson that they have taught. And this must be indicated using a pencil. If we see a pencil in the provincial lesson plan, we are assuming that the educator is using the provincial lesson plans. Also, when province is visiting your school, they also can see that the province did not waste money by just printing out this provincial lesson plan. But however, it is very disturbing that we go to other schools and you know, when as you are waiting in the other room, they are printing the provincial lesson plan on the day of the visit. So please, colleagues, make sure that educators are using these provincial lesson plan pencils. Dates must be there, reflection must be there. There must be some evidence that the teacher is actually using this particular provincial lesson plan. Now, from province, remember provincial targets and provincial objections, they are aimed for everybody in the province. But however, the manner in which the subject or the lesson went in the classroom is not going to be the same from school A to school B. So therefore, these provincial lesson plans must act as a framework, something that they need to use in order for them to develop their own lesson preparations. The lesson preparations, colleagues, they actually speak to what needs to happen in the classroom. What are the expectations? It says educator must use provincial lesson plans to develop their own lesson preparation, wherein the teacher must indicate wherein the teacher and learner activities are highlighted. You indicate what the teacher is going to do and you indicate the number of written activities that are that will be in the learner book. So Now, when you monitor as an HOD, that's what you monitor. What the teacher planned to do. Is it what really happened in the learner book? When you open, if the teacher said, I will do 4 or 5 activities, are they really there? Are they in the learner book? Because if we are only going to leave it at the provincial lesson plan, I promise you, colleagues, the teachers are not planning. They just go in the classroom, they open a textbook, and they want to teach from page 1 till the last page. When you ask them why they did certain activities, some of the activities, remember, colleagues, textbooks are just a resource. Some of the activities which are in the resource, they are not really necessary for the learners to do. So it's important that you monitor what you have planned to do as a teacher, which is the lesson preparation, and you also compare it with what is in the learner book. In an event a teacher is absent, you take those lesson preparations and you give it to the substitute teacher, and the teaching can continue. But in an event when the teacher is absent and the teacher has left nothing, another person who needs to be in that particular classroom wouldn't know what to do. So remember, colleagues, there's a saying that says, failing to plan, you are actually planning to fail. So if all our educators in social science don't plan, they are actually planning for us to fail as a subject. They are not taking care of the subject. So we need to have those lesson preparation. We have not given them a template or a strict directive of how these lesson preparations need to be like or structured like. Each teacher uses their own lesson preparation. They either use a book, depending with the school. Some schools are using books, and some schools, they have a certain template where the teacher indicates what the educator does and what are the activities that need to be done by the learner, and they also indicate the resources that are needed. And this is key, colleagues, because in most of the institutions we are visiting, we don't see this particular aspect, and it makes us worry. If teachers are not prepping or they are not planning, what is it that they teach in class? You cannot go to class if you did not plan to do that. You cannot go to class and teach if you did not plan that you are going to teach. So please, colleagues, we are urging with you, we are arguing with you, we're saying, please, can we make sure that the teachers are planning? In our PLG, this is what we always talk about, but we know that when they get to school, because they know that the HODs don't attend our meetings, then they just keep the information to themselves, because some of the educators are running away from some of the paperwork. But however, as much as we are saying we are cutting on paperwork, prep is important. You need to plan and you need to be prepared for the lesson that you are about to deliver. And then the next thing that we are going to talk about, colleagues, is the expectations in terms of the curriculum delivery. What are we expecting when we get to class or when we come to an institution? We are expecting the teachers to take the content topics and the subtopics. They must be taken from the RATP, nothing else. Not the textbook, not where they want, or not activity 1, because in some of the schools we find that they have activity 1, activity 2, activity 3 with no heading. Topics must come only from the RATP, nothing else. And that is very key, colleagues. It says these topics must be utilized as well as headings in the learner book. You will notice that when we go on with our discussion, when I show you with a tracking tool, that the very same topics that comes from the RATP, they are the ones that are appearing on the tracking tool. It will also facilitate the tracking of curriculum delivery quite easy. It will be easier for you as an HOD to track where the educator is. So please encourage the educators on a daily basis when they start teaching. The first thing that needs to be there is the date. It must be followed by the heading, because if we don't see these headings, we are then actually going to have problems because we don't know what the teacher, because in some of the schools, when you open the book, the first thing you come across is true, false, but you don't know what the learner was actually referring to. So the headings are key, colleagues. Please make sure that they are there. The other thing that is key as well is to make sure that social science teachers are not exempted in teaching the language. So at the beginning of every topic, they need to build vocabulary words. They are essential, colleagues. Remember, there was an article that came out that says the grade 4s can't read and write. I think it was 3 years ago. So language is important in all subjects. So as social sciences, we insisting that the teacher, before she starts with the teaching, if you are teaching about democracy, for instance, in grade 6, define the word democracy. Don't just give learners activities without giving vocabulary words. They are key, colleagues, because it builds on the knowledge that the learner is going to get when you are teaching the next topic. Another thing that we are seeing, which is lagging in most of the school, are the summary notes. What do we mean by summary notes? You summarize the content. If you are going to talk about, like I was saying, democracy, you can't photocopy exactly as it is from the textbook and merely put it into the learner book. We need to see those sources. If learners must refer to a map, when you open the child's book, the map must be there, so that it's evident that the teaching did take place, and the learners are then going to be given, before the learners can be given the written activities, so that this can also help when the learner is studying on a later stage. We find that in most of the institution, or let me not say not most, let me say in some institution, we find that this is one aspect which is still lagging. You know, when I was at school, we used to call these addendum. You can't teach history without having an addendum. You can't teach geography without having maps. Learners need to have those sources. They need to see the source before they can interact with the question. They can't interact with the question if the source is not there. They cannot interact with content if summary notes are not there. The addendum in the past, even the grade 12s nowadays, they still using it, or the terminology of addendum. So this is very key, colleagues. Social science, remember, colleagues, is like a content subject. Learners need to have content. They need to have substance of what they are doing. They cannot just be taught haphazardly as if we are doing something that has no substance. We need to have that substance in those books. Learners are expected to write on a daily basis. Remember, the first period they are taught, then the second period the learners are writing. So in a week, we are expecting at least to have 4, if not 3 written activities in the child's book. So it's important that these are evident. A teacher cannot have the whole week without having any written work. We cannot say that the last time the learners were writing, for instance, we are in August, the last time the learners were writing was in July. That is a very big mistake that we could be doing. So please, colleagues, can we please make sure this is one of the aspects that is actually taken care of? Mr. Gubai, do we have any questions from the floor or any comment from the colleagues?
Thank you, Ma'am Manzini. We don't have any hand icon showing that educators or HOD rather, they understand what you are talking about. Oh, there's one. While I was saying there's no hand, there is one from Mazibuko.
Yes,
Ma'am
you can.
Mazibuko or Mr.
Yes, good afternoon, sir and ma'am.
Good
My
afternoon, ma'am.
question
Afternoon.
is based on what Ma'am Manzini just spoke about in terms of the number of activities. Now, if an educator decides to break the 2 disciplines and maybe decides to take half of the term starting with history and then the rest of the term doing geography, is that allowed, or are they supposed to be taught simultaneously?
You see, I'm laughing because I don't want I don't want to have contrary information, because when we come for a school visit, we are expecting to monitor both discipline. So you will
Yes.
notice that on our curriculum tracking tool, the first week is given to geography and the second week is given to the history. Why we have done that is because when we come for a school visit, we calculate curriculum coverage for the one discipline and for the other. But
Yes.
however, what Mem Mazibuko is indicating, some institutions tend to want to lean on the choice of finishing the one discipline before they go to the other one. They can do that, but however, they must remember when we come for a school visit, if we find nothing for history, we'll write that you are at 0%. So it actually works against you when we come for a visit. But in terms of, what do you call? In terms of the choice of the teacher, maybe it could be working for them. But however, because the social science are the two subjects, we must not neglect one discipline over the other. And what we also noticed is when the teacher only want to teach one discipline till the end of the term or the end of the topics, we find that they only teach geography and there is nothing in the book when you open in the history. They would open up their eyes when 2 weeks is left before the examination. Then they want to push the learners to complete the content of the history, which is unfair for the learners. In some of the institution, you will find the teacher will even say, I don't teach history at all. So that is why, as a province or as the district, let me rather refer to the district, as a district, we felt that it is important that teachers are teaching the two disciplines concurrently so that both of them, they can be given equal attention. You will notice when I demonstrate with the educator reporting tool that in our reporting tool, the first week is given to geography. Then the second week, the teacher teaches the history. The third week, the teacher teaches geography. And then fourth week is history. Fifth week is geography. Sixth week is history. Seventh week is geography. And the last week, which is week 8, is the history. In all of our 4 terms, if you look at the CAPS document or the RATP document, we only have 4 major topics for each discipline. So in total, our 4 major topics are divided into 8. So if they are divided into 8, a teacher can make sure that all disciplines are given equal attention. And we are the only subject that is not actually, that does not have to end their teaching in week 10. Because in most of the subjects, they have a total of 10 weeks of content that they need to teach. So in social science, we have tried to match it so that the teachers can actually make sure that by week 8, they are done. In week 10, they are doing revision, they are writing a test, and they are not going to delay the submission of schedules, because during week 9, in most institutions, they are writing examination, or they are writing, sorry about examination word, the test. Oh God, now I'm still in the olden way of curriculum. They are writing a test and others are busy submitting the project. So in week 9, the HOD is finalizing even the schedule. So if you look at our content, it is structured in a way that an educator can finish their teaching in week 8. So please try and stick to the educator reporting tool. It will help you as an HOD. I hope that has answered Mem Mazibuko. I know that I did not give you is it a direct answer? As an
No,
English
I'm
teacher.
answered, ma'am. Thank you. I'm answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
I didn't give it away. They say when you are a teacher, you must not give everything away. Okay, the next one. Yes, sir.
Maybe just to add one point there.
Yes.
Once the subject policy is in place, the HOD will have a leg to stand on, because a policy document, rather the subject policy, will then indicate how many activities are expected to be given to learners per content topic. So once that is in place and educators are assigning that subject policy, the HOD will have something to say, you know, you can't give them these activities, these less activities, because the policy says you must give 2 or 3 and so on. So once we have our policies in place, like you have indicated, our curriculum checking tool, it gives guideline in as far as how many activities are expected per topic. But going back to issues of subject policy, I think if they can be amended, HODs will never have any problem in determining how many activities are supposed to be given to the learners. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for yes.
Before I give it to you, can Henley Primary please deactivate your camera? Henley Primary, your camera is on, sir. Kindly deactivate your camera, please. Henley Primary. Colleagues, we know that when we have to run meetings, we need to deactivate our cameras and our microphone.
Is somebody
It's
in front
disturbing,
of the
especially.
is somebody in front of the camera? Because sometimes we find that they leave the devices unattended. They join the meeting and leave the device unattended.
And the HOD, oh, thank you. The camera has been deactivated. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank
Over
you so
to you,
much.
madam.
Thank you so much, Ntate.
Thanks.
Just like what Mr. Kubai has alluded to, subject policies are key, colleagues. And the reason why we felt it's important for us to talk to the HODs themselves is because sometimes we are misquoted by teachers. You know, a teacher doesn't want to have enough written activities, and then they say, my subject advisor said, one activity is fine per week. It is not true, colleagues. If you look at the educator reporting tool, it will tell you how many written activities should be there. And rightfully what Mr. Gubai had said, if a subject policy is in place, it's a legal document. You can charge an educator for having not to do what they're supposed to do. Because, you know, sometimes they want to argue because they know that we don't have a leg to stand on. So please make sure that you update your subject policy so that when you want to hold, you want to take them to task, you can do so by quoting the relevant subject policy that you guys have at your institution. I think the next one that we need to talk about, after the teacher has taught, what are the expectations that are there in terms of the marking? Please, colleagues, teachers must avoid global marking. The global marking is that big tick that is in the middle of the book where teacher is marking notes. Colleagues, that is not needed. They need to have corrective marking whereby they check the understanding of the learner. Let them avoid the Nike. They mustn't support the Nike, rather they must support rather Adidas or whatever brand that they want. But please, the big tick in the middle of the page is not needed. They must avoid it at all times. If they do that, in some of the institution, we find that they even write the word sin. And I always ask myself, after you see it, what do you do with it? You have seen it as a teacher. Do you understand whether the child understands the work or not? And then the teacher just don't answer because you've seen it and there's nothing that you, so they must avoid even writing the word sin. It's not developmental. It's not developmental to the teacher because the teacher cannot know where the areas of difficulties are. You cannot identify. And to the learner, the child does not know exactly where they've gone wrong. They'll rather have corrective marking, per item. They must mark the answers that the learners are given. And also the learners must be encouraged to do corrections. Corrections are key, colleagues, because this can then also act as a remediation. If learners did not understand, they need to correct their mistakes so that when they write at the end of the term, then they can write the correct spelling, they can write even the correct answer perhaps if the question reappear in a test. The most important aspect in social science, I will reinforce on this one. Learners need to read and learners need to write. So teachers must avoid photocopying, and a child has an Oxford, or they have a platinum textbook, and they also have photocopies of the very same textbook in their books. No, colleagues. We spoke about summarizing. A teacher must summarize the notes and the learners must write those notes in their books. The more they write, the learning takes place. They must be able to read and write. I spoke about English across curriculum. Even in social science, a teacher must give learners an article where they are reading for enjoyment. Remember, we spoke about the DAR period. So in the DAR period where they drop all and read, if the teacher is covering maybe, for instance, democracy, or they are covering transport through times, which is in grade 4, a teacher must find an interesting article and give it to learners. Learners must skim and scan, find information from the text, answer simple questions like the 5 W's. The 5 W's which are used in English. Who is who are the characters that are in the story? When did it happen? Remember, in history, we deal about the timeline. When did the story happen? So it's important. Why did a certain event happen the way that it did? Why did democracy, for instance, why did we start voting only in 1994? Why couldn't we vote previously? And then you also have why was voting so important? So the 5 W's in social science are as important as in any other subject. So this reading and writing aspect, I cannot emphasize it more, because we find that in social science, teachers just want to give what is just basic from the textbook. Reading is a problem for all of us, not only the language teachers, but also the social science teacher, because the very same child who can't read in the English class is the very same child that is sitting in the social science class. So let us try and motivate our educators to say, reading, they must encourage the learners to read. They must encourage the learners to write. Also in social science, if you look at the program of assessment, we are expected to have paragraph writing. So paragraph writing as a skill, it needs to be taught in class. Teachers need to have a frame. They need to teach the learners about topic sentences. They need to teach learners about supporting statement and conclusion of their paragraph. So we have given them a structure on how, or a frame. In English, they call it a frame. We have given them a structure of how they need to teach, an example of how to write a paragraph. So reading and writing is an aspect which is key to us as well as social science teachers. So please, when you get to school, encourage them to do such, and please tell them that if they go to their presentation of the previous PLGs that we had with the teachers, these are the aspects that we've discussed, and these are the aspects that we are expecting when we get to school. Now, in terms of the tracking of curriculum delivery, we spoke about that this needs to, an educator reporting tool is to ensure that the content is on track. Because you will notice that I will demonstrate just now how to populate the tool. You'll notice that all the subtopics, they have a certain percentage which is put against each of the topic. We should also remember that in the very same tool, there is also a number of periods which are against a number of expected written activities, which we've been alluding to with Mr. Gubai. For every 30 minutes, it equals to 0.42. There's a typing error there, colleagues. It's 0.42%. And for every hour that the teacher, 1 hour, which is 2 periods, if you look at the timetable, 230 minutes, it is equaling to 0.83%. And because we are expected to teach 3 hours a week, so in each and every week, by the end of the week, we are expected, or there's an expectation that we are only going to be at the 2.5% per week. And before I go on, Mr. Gubayu, do we have any question from the floor? I just want to project a curriculum too.
Well, ma'am, from my side, there's no hand from our colleagues.
Okay, I just want to go back. Okay, our curriculum to look in this way. What needs to happen is very easy, because we've noticed that in most of the cases, educators or HODs, they are struggling with the calculations of percentages. If you go to our curriculum too, you will notice that there are columns. On this particular column that I've highlighted, it tells you how many periods are expected per topic. For instance, we are expected in our RATP, it says at the beginning of term 3, the educator should have started by giving revision of the previous term's work, and they should give learners their feedback, and they should also do their corrections. So you will notice that in most of the institution, when we arrive there, those revisions are not done. Baseline assessment is not done by most of the teachers. So they are missing on a percentage. If I look here, it equals to 0.84%. So before they can start with their teaching, it's the first topic that they need to do. You will notice that this first week is dedicated to geography. And then if you move down, this is a grade 5 curriculum 2. If you move, this is week 1 and this is week 2. In week 2, a teacher in week 1 was teaching geography, and in week 2, they are teaching the history. And then if you look at the column next to the number of written of periods, we've got the number of written activities which Mr. Gubai was referring to. In this instance, the color is indicated in green. Now, what do you do as an HOD? All that you need to do is to take the learner book and now look on the topics. Remember, I spoke about that educators need to have the headings. These are the headings I was referring to. When you open the book, you should see this topic where the educator was defining the word weather, climate, and vegetation in South Africa. It should be there. Revision as a heading, it should be there, and with those corrections that the learners were doing. And then the last item in that bullet is the elements of weather. Before the teacher starts, the heading is already up there so that it's easier for you as an HOD to actually calculate and to know where the teacher is actually at. Now, how do I populate it? All that I need to do, if this topic is there, this revision is there, I will then put a 1. I put a 1 by it's cell, I think this is cell E, it's column E, row 15. I will only put a 1 there. You will see that if I put a 1, it automatically gives a percentage this side where it says the actual percentage done. If the teacher did not do this one, it will be a 0, then I move on. And then now the teacher decided to start with the first lesson here and then there. The next one was the elements of weather. Now you will notice that the teacher only did the 2 topics. So how many written activities did this teacher do per week? She only did 2 instead of 3. So when you calculate out of 2.5%, the teacher is actually, if you add this particular percentages, it will give you 1.66%. So it's important that you know how to, the only important column is this particular column. There's a teacher who's talking.
Muted, ma'am, muted already.
Thank you so much, sir. So it's important that we know how to populate. So the teacher in the past, this was called, is it a pace setter? So it's important that you know how to pace your curriculum. So, and the teachers will never be behind in terms of the curriculum covering. So the next week it continues. The teacher is supposed to start with the history, the feedback, it's the feedback corrections of term 2, and the teacher decide to do it. And the following week, the teacher does that particular topic, and the teacher does the river Nile and how it had influence to the other to the settlement in along the river Nile. So now you look at how many written activities are in the child's book. So in 2 weeks, the teacher only covered 5 written activities. So it's easier for you as an HOD to actually know exactly where the teacher is. So if you add this percentages, you will notice that you will end up with 4.17 or 4.16. No, it will be 4.17 if you add everything together. So you will notice that the teacher is only behind by that 1 hour. So when you're writing a report to say where is the teacher lagging, you will say you are lagging. You didn't teach this topic, which was equating to 1 hour. The 1 hour, a backlog was 0.84, which is what is not in the teacher's in the learner book. So the learner book is going to help the educator in order for them to understand how to track the curriculum coverage. Unfortunately, or I don't know, it was meant to calculate automatically. You'll see that here it's still saying values. It's because the form was actually formulated, it was a different windows. That is why on column F it has point, and on this column it has a comma. That is why it's not giving us an auto calculations there. But going on in future, we'll try and make sure that you are getting an automated tool whereby it's easier for you to even pick it up without calculating it yourself as to where is the teacher in terms of the curriculum coverage. Mr. Gubai, do we have a hand regarding the educator reporting tool?
No, ma'am, we don't have any.
So the HODs, they are happy, they understand how our curriculum tool works. Okay, I'm gonna try and share let me go back and upload the presentation again.
There's Floyd Temba. Floyd needs to ask a question. Over to you, Floyd. Mr. Floyd. Your hand is up. Mr. Floyd?
Maybe it was it went up by itself.
No, it went down. It went down now. Oh,
it went
it's
down.
Still up. It's still
Is it
up.
still up?
Yeah. You are muted, sir.
Is it Floyd
Kindly unmute and ask.
Malinga?
It looks like, yeah, Floyd Temba M. Yes,
Okay,
Malinga.
it's the principle of Henley. Say you
Okay.
can ask a question.
Maybe it's a wrong hand.
Oh yes, maybe. Let me continue for the sake of time. Okay, I've done the demonstration, so I'm gonna move on. In terms of managing the subject itself, we have a resource link where you can get all necessary documents for social sciences. For instance, the CAPS document, the curriculum tracking tools, all the presentations that we've got. Once we've shared this presentation, you'll be able to click on that particular link and get everything that you might need as a subject head. We also, the next bullet speaks to the monthly subject meeting, which I already alluded to, I think, on the previous slides, where we said it needs to be held so that the educators can enhance their learner performance. And during these particular meetings, the educators are going to then discuss what are the challenges are, is also sharing the good practices with the colleagues in the subject. So it's very key, because remember what's important is for us to improve the performance of the subject. So it's important when we go for a school visit, when we look at the minutes, they must be addressing the matters of the subject. It cannot be just general meetings where you are talking about fundraising and then you regard that as subject meetings. Subject meetings must discuss subject matters where teachers are talking about performance of the learners, they're talking about stationery, they talk about resources that they need, and they talk about what is it that the other educator is doing, and improvement plan, like interventions that they need to share. And the other one that we spoke about is the supervision program that needs to be in place. So as an HOD, you need to have that management plan where you are outlining to the educators that when are you expecting at least to manage and to track curriculum. And it needs to be dated there, and it needs to be given to the educators at least way in advance, so that they don't say you are actually catching them not knowing that you were supposed to actually check their books. The tracking of the educators is at least expected once a month. If you do have time, then you can do it twice a month. It depends on your management plan, because we do understand that in a primary school setting, one HOD is managing almost 6 subjects. So it's very difficult for them to actually monitor the curriculum for all subjects all the time. So at least we are saying, let us at least have one reporting tool that is there that is indicating at least it was done. If we are lucky, then it will be twice, but at least we do accept one report. And also, we expecting that there should be a teacher file report as well as the learner book controls report. And these must be evident in the teacher file as well as the HOD file. If you are one of those educators or one of those HODs that does not have these reporting tools, please click on the link on the IP unit link. If you go to the DCS folder, all these tools are there. You'll notice that there will be an HOD management plan. There will even be an HOD, there will also be educator control page. There will also be for the learners how to control the learner books. So all these templates are there. So if you click on this particular link, you'll be able to get those resources that you need, because it's very heartbreaking when you get to a school and an HOD says, I do not have no reports for the educators because I do not have a template. We are sharing a link which we got from our unit head, who is Mr. Gezani Sikuni. He actually helped us with making sure that the HODs are getting the resources that they need. So if you click on that link, it's the very same link that the HODs are using, which was created by Mr. Sikuni. So please click there and print those reports. And when you are controlling, it needs to be in the teacher file as well, not only in the HOD file, because when we go to schools, we say the HOD did not monitor curriculum, only to find that those tools are only appearing in the HOD file. And the last bullet on that on this particular slide, it says, also conduct a handover report. Why do you do that? We find that a school had a provincial lesson plan, but because the teacher has gotten a promotional post, and then the teacher leaves with all the provincial lesson plans, and the school is left with nothing. So please, we are urging the HODs, please make sure that you conduct a handover report, especially when either the teacher is moving internally or they are moving externally. Sometimes they move the subject. One teacher was teaching social science and now she's teaching NS Tech. And then we find that in social science, all the things are gone. And then it just becomes not a manageable situation. So please make sure that when teachers are moving, you conduct a report and a handover is done correctly. This is just a reminder. I'm not going to dwell much, but I'll just say in geography grade 4, we are expecting to have, it's a control test for both discipline. which is geography and history. And then in the grade 5, they are expected to have the project which they are doing in geography and a controlled a school-based controlled test for the history. And the topics we're only focusing in term 3 content only. So for this term, for all 3 grades, it's only the content from term 3. And then in grade 6, geography, it's a control test, and then the history is the project. I need to stress this to the HODs. Projects cannot be given to learners to be done at home. It needs to be done at school. For both grades, we are given 2 hours. At 2 hours, it's like a week where a teacher needs to make sure that this particular project is done. So a teacher cannot say this was a learner did not submit. Last week or a week before last, we have taken them through the steps of what they need to do in the classroom with the learners, both grade 5 and grade 6. So they know very well what are the aspects that need to happen in the classroom when they are administering the project. Grade 5, they have already started with the project. Even grade 6, they were expected to be starting in week, some of the schools started in week 4 and other schools are starting in week 6. So please make sure that this particular project is done in class. Why do we do a project way in advance? So that the teacher can assist all the learners who don't have, for instance, resources with research. So the teacher is going to be in the classroom and trying to give as much assistance to the learners. So this is one of the things that we needed to allude to. And then the total marks in terms of the of the mark allocation, it hasn't changed. Grade 4 is still at 25%, and grade 5 is at 30 marks per discipline, and then the grade 6, they are at 40 marks per discipline. And I will talk about the cognitive levels on the next slide. I don't want to address it on this particular one. Now, colleagues, like I said, our question papers need to move from the less difficult question to the most difficult questions. So when the teachers are setting question papers, this is just a reminder. They need to start with lower order questions, which must then be followed by the middle order questions, and it must be followed by the higher order question. You will notice that our percentage is not the same as in all other subjects. Ours is 30% for the lower order, 50% for the middle order, and 20% for the higher order question. So please, colleagues, be wary of the percentages. In our cases, this is how it's supposed to be, because we find that some of the instances, the teacher, if a teacher is teaching, they're teaching NS Tech and social sciences, they want everything to be the same. For instance, I know that in NS Tech, I think it's 40, 50, and 10%. So their percentages is not the same as in the social science. The guiding words there are the ones that are going to guide you when you are moderating the question paper. I spoke about the 5 W's, which are important: the what, the why, the where, and how, and when, which is also important in our social science. So can you see this is from the policy document in terms of the cognitive levels. Now, colleagues, I will demonstrate, or I'll give you an example. For all the social science formal assessment, a teacher must submit to you what we call an analysis grid. An analysis grid is where the teacher is going to plot their mark allocation. For instance, this question was question 1.1. It ended with 1.4. The mark allocation there was 4 marks. What was the question trying to test the learners? What was the skill assessed in that particular question? The learners were stating whether the statement is true or false. And that is lower order question because the learners must recall the information, what they've learned before. So it's lower order questions. It will fall under this part where the learners are giving knowledge, they're recalling on what they know. And then the next question, then the teacher moves on. It's from 2.1 to 2.5. Now the teacher must match the concept with their meaning, the definitions, the vocabulary words which we spoke about. It's out of 5 marks. You will notice that in most of the cases, because the teacher has already given the learners the concept, they just need to remember what they have learned. And then show that they can comprehend and they understand the work. It's still falling under the lower order question. Now, if you look at our mark allocation, a 4 plus 5, it will give me the 9 marks, which is what is expected in terms of the 30%. Remember, the 30% is going to be 9 marks when it comes to the grade 5. Now, she then moves on and gave a pie chart where the learners had to do the skill assessed in the pie chart was data handling, where the learners were studying the pie chart. The questions were based on the pie chart. Now, because the learners are going to apply the knowledge of what is projected on the pie chart, it's going to fall under the middle order question out of 7 marks. You'll see application of knowledge is going to be out of 7 marks. Now, the learners needed to read a case study and answer the question on the extract. The 8 marks now was also given there. And now, because they must read a story and answer the questions, it's out of 8 marks. It's application of knowledge because they must skim and scan the text. And then because it's skimming and scamming, they are applying the knowledge. And if you add the 2, the 7 and the 8, it will give you the 15 marks. And now, the last question, the teacher said the learners must write a short paragraph about how the river flows, for instance. Because it's a short paragraph and paragraph writing falls under the learners had to synthesize, they had to rearrange their own thinking into their own words in order for them to convey the message. Now, because it's high order question, it is out of 6 marks. Now, if you add at the bottom, you will notice that 9 plus this one, it will give you 24 marks plus the 6 marks, it will give you the 30 marks. So if a teacher has done this, they have done your work easier as an HOD. You already know that the cognitive levels have been taken care of and the question paper is well balanced, and the teacher did not only ask the lower order question where teachers are filling in the missing words, state whether the statement is true and false, and there is no middle order question and there is no higher order question. So this is a minimum expectation when it comes to the assessment. Analysis grid needs to be submitted with a question paper. Now, when you moderate the question paper, the layout is very key, colleagues. Like I said, the questions must be progressing from the less difficult questions to the most difficult question. It must be scaffolded. You cannot start a question with difficult questions to the learners because you scare the learners out. So an educator remind them that they need to start with less difficult questions, progressing to the most difficult question. These are the minimum technical aspects that we are expecting in the social science paper. The name of the school should be there, the district, which is Johannesburg Central, the name of the subject, the discipline, if it's geography paper. If it's a control test, it must say control test, the topic which is being assessed in the particular question paper. The learners must be provided with a space where they can write their names, their surnames, and their grade. The examiner, who is the teacher who's assessing the learner's name, must be on the cover, as well as your own name as a moderator. We're also expecting that you should have a total mark indicated on the question paper, as well as the duration. How long is a question paper? In social science, it's 1 hour per discipline. It cannot be more than 1 hour. We've got 60 minutes per discipline for the assessment. It's indicated on the CAPS document. And also, it must indicate the page numbers. Page numbers are key, colleagues. If, for instance, when you rise or you photocopy the question paper and there's a page missing, a child can be able to say, I don't have page 2 or I don't have page 3. So it's very key. Numbering of pages is also key. The font type that we are expecting is Arial 12. It should be readable. Learners must be able to read what is on those question paper. Now, this is an exemplar that we have used to show the colleagues how the cover page should look like. The stuff that I spoke about in terms of the the front cover of what needs a minimum requirements, instructions. It says here, this question paper consists of 12 pages, and it also instruct the learners to complete their names and to complete their surnames. And it also instruct the learners that they must answer all the questions and they must take note of the mark allocation and what they should use. Remember, I spoke about the analysis grid, the cognitive analysis grid. It will help the educator to know whether the question paper is it balanced or it is not balanced. Now, in terms of the cognitive of the technical aspect, these are some of the questions. You will notice that this mannequin must be able to move with ease from A to B. This is our learner. A learner must be able to move from A to B without any help from the teacher. It says, can the learner be able to go through the question paper without the assistance of the teacher? The first question is, are the instructions clear and not ambiguous? Can the learner understand, or the question is confusing? And then also they must be cognizant of the question numbering. Question numbering, if questions are belonging to question 1, for example, it must say 1.1 followed by 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. If the questions they belong to question 2, it must be 2.1 till whatever number where the teacher is going to end. It mustn't be question 2, 1.2 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then question 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because now the learner, there's no synergy in your numbering, and there is no that numbering that the learner, remember the learner must move from 1 to the other number. Another aspect which is key, colleagues, are the illustrations or the scenarios and the maps, which we always remember. We said in social science, it's a source-based subject. Maps must be there. Diagrams must be there. Pictures must be there. Images must be there. But however, all these sources must be clear enough so that when you duplicate them, they are not distorted and they can be reproduced as many times as possible. So teachers cannot give you a dark picture, because when the learners need to interpret that image, they won't be able to do so. And what we also expecting from the teachers is that they need to acknowledge where they got their sources. If it's from Platinum, they must say Platinum page whatever. If it's from the internet, they must put a link where it was actually taken from. So it says questions that follows, it must be relevant to the source so that the learners can be able to use the source and refer to the source. You cannot have a source that has questions that are irrelevant to the source. So make sure that when you are moderating these question papers, the moderation is in line in terms of, because sometimes we find that HODs, they say a question paper was of good quality, but when we are there, we ask ourselves, this question is even confusing myself as an official. How about the learners who are actually writing the test? Then the second aspect or criterion that is very key when we are moderating is that one of the content which was covered. The first item, it says prescribed topic. Remember, colleagues, we've got Circular 2 of 2022, which tells us which topics to assess per term. If you look at that one, in term 2, for instance, we were expected to assess content from term 1 and term 2. Now we are in term 3. We are only expected to assess content which is going to be taught in term 3 only. And then in term 4, we are going to be actually expected to assess content which is going to be covered term 3 and term 4. So prescribed topics must be CAPS compliant. You cannot only ask topics which are not CAPS compliant or which were taught previous term. You must ask topics that are actually term related. The weighting of the topics as well. is also prescribed on that. It says questions covered the content specified term according to the RATP, which is what I just alluded to. The fairness and the authenticity of the questions. Are the questions fair when you are reading the question paper? Or they are a bit ambiguous, or they are too difficult? Are they biased when you are reading them? Are they gender bias? Are they racial bias? So the fairness of those question papers is very key. Subject specific terminologies and languages. The correct use of language or specified terminology. For instance, if you are referring to geography, if you want to talk about direction, is the teacher using the word direction, or is the teacher saying, where am I? Is it fair for the learners to know, to guess what the teacher wants to ask? The language which is used also must be appropriate to the grade and the the grade and the age of the learners. The totals of each question. Each question must have, it says marks must be calculated correctly per subsection. So each question must have a mark indicated there and a grand total for a particular question. Now, I spoke about the distribution of marks when I was demonstrating the cognitive level grid. It says there is a correlation between the mark allocation and the level of difficulty. Lower order questions are given 1 mark. Middle order questions, they can be given 2 marks. And then the higher order question, just like that, they are progressive. You cannot give true or false 2 marks. State whether the statement is true or false. Is each answer should be allocated a 1 mark. So we find that in some of the schools, when we go for moderation or when we actually go for a school visit, they say 1 multiplied by 2, and in some cases 2 multiplied by 4. So if a child gets that 1 question wrong, there are higher chances that the child is actually going to fail the subject. And then now, the cognitive levels, which I alluded to on the previous page. It says the first aspect there, it says the spread must vary, meaning that you must start from the lower order questions to the middle order questions to the higher order question. And then you must also use a variety, multiple choice question, paragraph writing, and rubrics should be attached there. And source-based questions must have sources which are attached there. Closed and open-ended questions must also be included. So there must be a variety of types of questions in a question paper. The analysis grid I've spoken about, which shows the distribution of cognitive levels and mark allocation, should be submitted with the question paper. And then underneath, there's a table which can help the HOD in terms of the mark allocation. It says marks must be varied and weighted in accordance with policy. The table below is actually demonstrating or showing you how many marks is expected in each grade. Remember, we said mark allocation in grade 4 is out of 25 marks. So in the lower order questions, raw marks of grade 4 for the lower order question should not be exceeding 8 marks. And then the middle order should be 12 marks and the higher order should be at 5 marks. In the grade 5, which is the example that we have used, it's a 9